Check, 1, 2. Okay. Hey, my name's Dana Harbaugh, and I never thought the skills I was taught 35 years ago would be so useful later on in life. I'm creating this new video, and the title is kind of long, but here it goes. The title is How Your Military Used Your Tax Dollars to Train Guys Like Me to Fight Marxist Brainwashing Tactics that are used so openly via CRT indoctrination and the ubiquitous diversity, equity, and inclusion committees popping up across the nation and are being jammed down everyone's throats. As I tinker with the idea of getting involved in and attending our City Council's new Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee meetings, as per an email notice I received from our city mayor, I decided to write down my knee-jerk thoughts on the matter. I know such committees usually frown upon the idea of merit and actual real-world experience when putting together the members of the board of these committees. I feel as though I need to explain just how diverse my particular background is. I'm just wondering if I can be included in this diverse discussion. As a 61-year-old, 100% service-connected, disabled U.S. Navy combat veteran and Fairview Park resident since 2012 and homeowner since 2019, I believe I bring a perspective and a level of experience that few, if any, on the board have ever even heard of. Many of you younger people may not know this, mainly because modern government-run schools won't teach you about it. But just prior to the horrific attacks on September 11, 2001, and the subsequent 20 years of fighting the, quote, war on terror, there was a war America fought over 40 years. The Cold War, which started in 1945, and as per Wikipedia, came to an end when the Soviet Union collapsed and formally dissolved itself from existence in 1991. But what was the Cold War all about? The Cold War, in a nutshell, was a war fought to defeat Marxism. Yes, the philosophy of Marxist socialism on a global scale. The same Marxism that swept through and imprisoned Eastern Europe after World War II. The Marxism that swept through and imprisoned North Korea for more than 70 years. The Marxism that swept through Southeast Asia and most horribly in Vietnam. The Marxism that placed Soviet nuclear-tipped missiles 90 miles off the Florida coast in Cuba. The Marxism that bulldozed a Soviet strategic bomber runway on the island of Grenada. The same Marxism and its countless mass graves and numerous other incidents around the globe. Part of the U.S. military's doctrine in fighting Marxism during the Cold War included a classified program to train Navy pilots and aircrew and other special forces operators how to endure being tortured and interrogated if taken prisoner of war. SEER School, or Survival, Evasion, Resistance, and Escape School, was created specifically to help U.S. POWs endure the psychological and physical abuse the Marxists were so well known for throughout the Korean and Vietnam Wars. Basically, SEER training revolved around anti-Marxist brainwashing tactics. Idolized within the U.S. Navy, Vice Admiral James Bond Stockdale was awarded our nation's highest military award, the Medal of Honor, for his leadership during his many years living through Marxist torture and mistreatment while held captive in the famous Hanoi Hilton prison camp during the Vietnam War. Thousands of hours of detailed torture experiences from Stockdale and other POWs were recorded after their release and was used as the foundation for the curriculum for this incredible school known as SEER School. I went through this POW training back in 1988 while training to become an enlisted sensor operator flying aboard the Navy's S-3 Viking aircraft. My job while in the fleet was to hunt Soviet submarines from the air and, if needed, drop nuclear weapons on them in the event that World War III had kicked off. Aside from the seemingly countless dangers that air crews such as myself faced during our normal flight operations, being taken prisoner of war and tortured seemed to be a fate worse than being killed in action. We saw photos of POWs' horrific injuries they endured by their Marxist captors. We read volumes of personal stories of POWs and their soul-crushing psychological trauma they were forced to live with. So imagine what kinds of classified information regarding the hunting of Soviet submarines was rattling around my brain that could be exploited by Marxist interrogators if I were ever shot down in enemy territory. Such scenarios of how much pain and suffering you could endure raced through my mind on a constant basis. One of the many Marxist interrogation tactics used against our POWs during Vietnam included the use of guilt trips to shame a prisoner into divulging secrets or other useful information to the enemy. Guilt trips such as "you're dropping napalm on our babies" and "your entire country is protesting this illegal war you're waging against the innocent Vietnamese people," were very effective in making a prisoner doubt his devotion and duty to his nation. Similarly, modern-day Marxists and socialists and progressives and other left-wing totalitarians wield guilt trips as their go-to weapon of choice throughout not only our political landscape, but in our local school board meetings, town councils, and seemingly every aspect of our society. Quote, "You're an extremist because you salute the American flag," or "you're evil because you went and fought for the free flow of oil at market prices during Operation Desert Storm. You don't care about the environment because you don't kowtow to the Green Gestapo. You hate foreigners because you don't want open borders. You hate people of color just because you're white. You hate women because you think killing viable babies is wrong. You hate homeless people because you complain about the open sewage pits in our most beautiful cities in America. You hate people of color if you think gangster rap is killing young black males. You're a hater if you disagree with me philosophically. You're an extremist if you own property. You're an extremist if you want a safe neighborhood. Ad nauseum. All are guilt trips, and in many cases, these guilt trips do exactly what they're intended to do: to shut you up and keep you from disagreeing with the Marxist overlords. Look how many companies, organizations, government agencies, and even our military are now being forced to set up re-education camps with mandatory diversity, equity, and inclusion training. All of these DEI brainwashing nodes throughout the country are wielding incredible political power through unelected bureaucrats who are highly steeped in, quote, social change and, quote, social justice and other avant-garde Marxist tropes. The western Cleveland suburb of Fairview Park, where we live, is another example of where Marxist guilt trips forced our beautiful city to create a diversity, equity, inclusion committee, which are all volunteers, of course, i.e. unelected, quote, justice warriors, to advise the city on how racist, sexist, and anti-socialist the city is. The Cleveland Plain Dealer media outlet calls this Fairview committee a, quote, the Anti-Racism Task Force. Even though this DEI committee is ostensibly an all-volunteer group, inferring that there's no cost to the taxpayer, the power they wield is truly scary. And that all-volunteer or free power is very costly to the taxpayers. Eventually, all formal matters that any given city council works on will have to be filtered through such unelected committees who will have final approval on projects and policies, being adjudicated as to any inherent biases or ostensibly, quote, racist aspects, such as, quote, we need to revamp the hiring practices of our police department because no blacks are volunteering to become cops, or, quote, written tests for police are inherently racist because some applicants can't write. If your city won't fly a rainbow flag over City Hall, your town is against the ever-expanding list of letters and special character symbols of the LGBTQ plus ampersand / question mark / star dot pound sign gibberish being forced down everyone's throat. Heaven forbid if you don't know or are not keeping up with all the latest definitions of this Marxist tripe, because the sexual identity police will place a target on your back and your online presence will forever be a blinking red light of bigotry, defined by people you've never spoken to or even know of. How many wonderful homeowning and tax-paying Americans are being scared off from serving in various aspects of their community because their traditional love and devotion to this nation are being used as a guilt-trip baseball bat to bludgeon them on social media and in other online media formats by these Marxist know-it-alls. That's it for now.